Did you hear that, kiddo? That's music from Bubsy 3D. And you're right, it sounds like someone put their instruments in a meat grinder. But it also works with the game. Why is that? Because just like the music, the game is terrible. Even though this is bad music, I think it's actually good video game music because it helps enhance the painful experience. This is what video game music is for, enhancing the experience, and it doesn't matter if that experience is good or Bubsy 3D. I just said all that so you'll understand what I think about video game music. So in this video I'll be going over stuff like the effect of music in video games, some soundtracks, obviously my conclusion, and a couple of other things. So now it's time for my unprofessional and completely unqualified opinions on video game music. This segment is not the best research in the world because I wanted this to be more about my thoughts, but I felt like it was important, so it's here anyway. Alright, I'm gonna try rapid fire myself through the 60s. Let's start with Gunfight 1975, first game to have music, then Space Invaders was the first game to have an adapted soundtrack, which meant the music sped up as you played, at least in this case. This was also apparently due to a bug, so that's fun. Then the Atari 2600 was the first home console to have a sound chip, and Vanguard was the first use of licensed music in a video game. That's the 70s. During the 70s, hardware was obviously quite limited, so most of the soundtracks have very similar bleepity bloopity kind of sounds to them, but still amazing things were done with the technology and are still being done today. In the 80s, the NES hit a scene with a whopping 5 sound channels. Now this is video game music. Not stuff from the 70s wasn't, it's just the NES sounds a lot better. It still doesn't sound great though. Obviously it was still incredibly limited, but with the release of the SNES, you got a whole 64 kilobytes to work with. Yeah, that's still not a lot of storage, but the compression gave most of the music its charm. Listen to any restored song from this era, I guarantee the original will sound better. Of course, I can't not mention David Wise, the composer for Taboo. Oh, and Donkey Kong Country, he also composed Donkey Kong Country. Yeah, David Wise was a wizard with the NES's limited tech. I mean, listen to this. This is Aquatic Ambience, and it took 5 weeks to make. It sounds so good. After the SNES, music in video games quickly became less and less limited, and we're now at the point where most AAAs have fully orchestrated soundtracks. So that was my brief history of video game music. If you're more interested in the topic, I highly suggest you do your own research and check out some of the links that I found helpful. They're in the description. The effect of music in video games I think is still often overlooked because it is more, looked at today, but in a review there's still just going to be like a single sentence saying something like, and it has an amazing soundtrack as well. Of course there's exceptions to this, and occasionally music from a video game can become more well known than the video game itself. I'll get on to you later. But overall, video game soundtracks are still underappreciated, in my opinion. The soundtrack should be as important as graphics when reviewing a game, because even though they don't affect the players that much on the surface, it can become the thing that defines that game in that person's mind. Okay, so look at it this way. If a good game has a bad, and I mean like really bad soundtrack, it will ruin the game, either by breaking the immersion or breaking your ears. When a good game has a soundtrack that's just like, meh, okay, it won't bother anyone that much, it's still a good game, it's just good music. But when a good game has a good soundtrack, people will notice it, and it dramatically improves the longevity and just the overall experience of that game. So what I'm saying is soundtracks can make or break a video game, but in a different way from most other things can, because most make or break moments in games are down to personal preference. Like one person might be willing to wait through a long tutorial, while another may not. Most people when playing games don't really mind that much about the type of genre of the music, because it just kind of needs to fit the tone of the game, and if it doesn't, well, people notice and people get mad and complain about the game online. Now, usually a game can get away with just having meh music because people don't care that much, but if the game is more based around music, you're gonna want good music or people are just gonna lose interest. Thought it was worth just putting that out there because, I don't know, I need filler content or something, who cares. Anyway, music creates emotion and feeling, but in a video game you have to match that feeling and emotion to the game. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. So I was quite on the fence about whether to include this segment because I didn't really have much to say that wasn't just the status quo, but I feel like it's necessary, so here goes. Where to implement music and different genres of music in a video game is sort of obvious if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. Like, if your high octane shooter has smooth jazz playing in the background, yeah, that's not gonna work. Not having the correct music in video games can ruin it more than just having straight up bad music. Fortunately, most video games do get this right though, like Animal Crossing, which has perfected its relaxing music and it fits so well with the laid back theme of the gameplay. Plus, having a different song for every hour is genius on so many levels. Like, yeah, this is exactly how 5 AM in the morning feels. It feels depressing. On the other side of the spectrum there's Doom. This game is pretty intense if you're a complete and utter weakling, like me, and its heavy metal soundtrack fits it well and gets you ready to kill some demons. Doom is a good example of how music can motivate you to do things in games, because, like I said, Doom's, gets you ready to kill demons and save the world for them. And in horror games, it motivates you to piss your pants. Now, especially in horror games, they just kind of decide not to have a soundtrack sometimes and then just replace it with ominous sounds like creaks or, I don't know, it's an enemy groaning in the background, and this works really well with horror games, but not having much music can actually help other games like life sims and just simulator games in general can benefit from not having much music. The look of your game can also greatly affect how the music will sound. Like, if a game is 8 or 16-bit, it will usually have a very retro feeling soundtrack, or if your game's more bright and colourful like Mario or A Hat in Time, the soundtrack would be more upbeat and whimsical to reflect that. Or games that are themed after a certain time period would have music that's like that certain time period's. Or, well, I could go on and on, but I won't. Also, I'm not saying these are the rules for what a game's music has to be, but I am saying this is what I mostly see in games I play. But the first game I'm using as an example certainly does do a few of these things. Minecraft's music is some of the most relaxing stuff I've ever heard. Or I haven't heard, because despite having lots, and I mean lots, of music tracks, they're hardly ever played during gameplay. Most of the time you're just left with a thoughtful silence, which definitely works in favour of the game, because doing a lot of things, at least in Minecraft single player, is very cathartic and almost therapeutic for me anyway, and playing very little music during that time definitely adds to that a lot. But when the music does play, you probably won't even notice it unless you're listening out for it, but it will still ingrain itself in your memory, and when you hear that music again, it's a powerful feeling. Like, I know when I get older I am going to be very nostalgic for Minecraft and this music. It's almost as if it's designed to be nostalgic through its very relaxing and surreally chill vibe. There are music discs in the game, but I want to focus on the soundtrack, and I don't really want to talk about those because, personal reasons. Like I said, the music is surreal, and it has a sort of weird sadness to it that it's hard to explain. But I don't really need to explain it. Everyone's played Minecraft and listened to its soundtrack, so all you need to do is listen to any music piece from the game and you'll get it. Probably. What, were you expecting something less vague? You don't expect me to be able to explain this well, do you? I know next to nothing about music and music theory, apart from how to listen to it, and roughly translate my feelings into a YouTube video that no one will watch. Okay, that got a bit real there. There's a piece of music in Minecraft called Mice and Venus. How funny is that? Ha! Ha! Okay, one last serious thing about Minecraft's music is I can remember pretty much any music from the game, but despite that, I still feel like the music blends together way too much. I'm not saying any of it sounds bad, but despite that, it sounds very samey. It sounds odd. I'm saying it sounds a lot, but when I was listening to Minecraft's soundtrack, I just kept on thinking, wait, haven't I already heard this one? It's probably just a me thing, but Mice on Venus. You know how in some games the music can be part of the world building? Well, the music in Splatoon is like I am the world building. If you're wondering why that is, well, 1, all the singing is done in an inkling language, a fictional language that consists of gurgly and distorted odd sounds. And 2, nearly every song in Splatoon has its own fictional band behind it, and every band has its own members and history. For instance, Chirpy Chirp's a band in the game which has made 4 songs: Shelfie, Split and Splat, Blitzit, and Wave Prism. The members of the band are Noji, a brightly coloured inkling who's the band's guitarist and backup vocalist, Ryan or whatever, the band's bassist who's a shy flapjack octopus. Why is that so specific? Anyway, there's also Shikaku, a crab, and the band's drummer, who's the oldest member of the band and has played a number of other bands, and Parkuro, or I can't pronounce these names, the vocalist anyway. She's a sea anemone and has a small fish in her hair that's dying of neglect. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention Splatoon is actually quite dark when you look at the world building too much, or at all. Anyway, that's just one of the bands, and I missed out a ton of info, like how all their songs have their own style and can be easily recognised because the main singer has her voice distorted in all of them. And their album art, because they have albums and they have album art, but their album art is like got a consistent style across all 2 albums. It's just incredible the amount of effort that was put into this. There's so much flavour text to this, and the people making the game really did not need to go this far, but they did, and it is amazing. It adds so much more to the world, and I haven't even had the chance to talk about the music itself yet, so yeah, let's do that. There is one word that I'd use to explain Splatoon's music, and that word is trendy. Lots of the music sounds quite similar to modern pop, but the main difference is it actually doesn't sound like garbage. Which is impressive because, in my opinion, pop music today is... I think the various distortions and unique vocals really help to differentiate it from pop, and pretty much any other music. Splatoon's music is possibly the most unique video game music and even music I've ever heard, and yet it manages to still sound like trendy youth music. I think on every conceivable level Splatoon's music was a success. Not only did it sound like something young people would like, it also managed to sound amazing. I suggest you check out Eurothug 4000's video on how Splatoon and Jet Set's radio ingrains itself in your mind if you want a more in-depth look at the element of that music. Apart from being very trendy sounding, the distortions and gurgly singing help to bring a kind of authenticity to the world, and I think it's totally believable that the Inklings and Squid Kids would listen to this. The music also has a very synthwave. Is synthwave the right word? I have no idea. Anyway, it has a very synthwave feel to it, which I just really like, and it continues to make the world more and more believable. Splatoon's soundtrack is probably one of my favourites in all of video games, and I've not even played the games that much. That's how good it is. But notice how I said one of my favourites. Probably all knew this was coming, but oh my god, Undertale's music is so goddamn good, and Toby Fox is the best video game music composer ever. Now, that's out of the way, look up Megalovania Strikes Back remix on YouTube, and there will be hundreds of remixes of the original Megalovania Strikes Back, which in itself is a remix of the original Megalovania, and on top of that, if you look hard enough, there are remixes of Megalovania Strikes Back, and even if you scroll down quite a bit, the videos will will still have like 70k views. But the best or worst part, depending on who you ask, is they're all at least decent. I have yet to encounter a bad remix of any Undertale songs. Even the rearrangements that should be bad, like Megalovania, but every note is the same length, they still sound good. I think Megalovania is a rare occurrence of a video game song being more popular and well known than the actual game itself. Ask some random person about Undertale and they might know about the game, but chances are they're going to know about the funny internet skeleton in Megalovania. Megalovania is one of the strangest things I've ever seen the internet create. Well, I know Toby Fox created it, but at this point the idea of Megalovania has been warped and changed so much by the internet that it isn't just Toby Fox's anymore. It's hundreds of creators that to this day, 5 years after the game's released, are still making remixes for it. But I think this is a one-off thing because the circumstances around Megalovania's explosion and continued explosion in popularity were so specific that I doubt they'll be replicated. So, let's talk about the rest of Undertale's soundtrack, which has mostly had the Megalovania treatment, but to a much lesser extent. It's well known at this point that Undertale's music is amazing, with not one bad song to be found. From the adrenaline pumping boss themes, which are all god tier if you ask me, to the more relaxing themes like Snowdin Town's theme and Home, which honestly just makes me feel safe. I'm gonna be bullied for saying that. Oh well. No one's gonna see this anyway, no one cares. I also can't forget about Undertale. Not the game Undertale, the music piece Undertale. It's just such a great and sad melody, but at the same time it's quite optimistic, like it's saying yes, bad and sad things have happened, but you can make them better. Or worse, I guess. Anyway, it's just such an amazing piece. So, I want to talk about Deltarune in this segment, but it's already the longest segment in the video, so in conclusion, Undertale's music is a near perfect example of how the internet can evolve a simple bit of music into its own subgenre, and just has such a good soundtrack that it needs its own video. No, an entire series of videos. No, its own chat. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. I'm including a Nintendo segment in my video because more than any other video game company, they seem to care about music. It may just be a bias I have since I do mostly play Nintendo games, but I see Nintendo's music, especially their older works, being talked about a lot more than any other company's. That may just be because of nostalgia, but even if it is, that doesn't mean Nintendo hasn't made some amazing soundtracks in their time. Look at Mario Odyssey, a textbook example of Nintendo really putting in the extra effort. The obvious example of this would be... But I'd like to look at Steam Gardens, which you may have heard before because every gaming YouTuber ever uses this. Which I think just shows how much effort's put into this, because it's not just Steam Gardens that's used in the background of so many YouTube videos, it's literally any Nintendo song ever. This is because of one simple reason. The music's good, and in the case of Mario, it's very catchy. So it's perfect background music. And a lot of Nintendo's music is like this as well, but it's not just catchiness, sometimes it's orchestratedness. Now, Nintendo wasn't the first to use orchestrated soundtracks, but in my opinion, they do it the best. I mean, look at Mario Kart 8, that soundtrack is so good. Mount Wario being an especially big standout, and they got like a proper band in from outside to do that music. So, they care, and many of their soundtracks are still considered some of the greatest in gaming to this day. I want to talk about Nintendo and their music because I didn't want to go straight to the conclusion after talking about Undertale. Wait, no, that's not right. I mean because they're an excellent example of what happens when a big company cares about video game music. Yeah, let's go with that. In conclusion, video game music is good. Thank you for wasting your time. Goodbye. Okay, seriously though, I've been listening to a lot more video game music lately. Especially when I'm doing online schoolwork and such. I found myself gravitating towards it more and more, and I can now say with absolute certainty that 1. I have a greater appreciation for video game music and the people who make it, and 2. It's now my preferred music genre. Well, it's not really a genre or a style, it's more of a thing. Alright, my preferred music thing. My reasons for loving video game music so much is I just think so much effort is put into the soundtracks, and during lockdown it helped to alleviate the boredom and probably made lockdown better as a result. Oh, I'm not saying video game music saved me during lockdown, I would have been fine without it, but I am saying it helped me. Not much, but enough to make lockdown just that little bit more bearable. So I guess I made this video so I could just write my thoughts down on it. So if you had watched this far, thank you for listening to my unqualified thoughts on video game music. It does actually mean quite a bit to me. And if you're watching right now and are thinking something along the lines of what a loser, that's fine. I couldn't really care less.